Jen and Cam are two funny ladies who like to talk about murder, mass murder, murder-suicide, serial killers, spree killers, thrill killers, contract killings, honor killings, and a whole lot of other shit too heinous for me to list here. If you're disturbed by this sort of content, you may want to listen to something else. And if you're a child trying to listen to our true crime podcast, well, you better ask your mama.
Well, hello, Jen.
Hey, Cam, how are you?
I am pretty good. I'm pretty stellar, if you will.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Pretty interested in this case that I have for us today.
Good.
And I got to be honest, I kind of had some fun writing it because it kind of took me back. And it will you as well as our fellow listeners that are from the St. Louis area.
Like gonna go back in time, that kind of stuff?
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
I can't sing, but you ready to go?
I am.
Today's case, like I said, is local to us. It takes place not long ago, but many landmarks around here have since disappeared. So if you're from the Lou, you're going to be sure to remember some of these spots. And also, you might not be familiar with the story or not have very many details about it, as I found out during my research.
Right. And for those that don't know, the Lou is the nickname for St. Louis.
Which I get into that in a little bit.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay.
It was June 28th, 1990, when two TWA flight attendants decided to grab a bite to eat near the St. Louis Lambert airport. They decided to go out to a little local Mexican favorite, Casa Gallardo.
Casa Gallardo.
You know, on St. Charles Rock Road. The pair were seated at a table next to the big window, and as the pair were talking and trying to decide between the chimichanga or the steak soft tacos, but definitely what they were not going to have to decide on is, you ready? A grande margarita, or even better, a pitcher of margs. If you know, you know. This goes back to around here. Back in the day, you would get these huge grande margaritas, which I think were they like 3 in 1 in a great big margarita glass, do you remember? Or you could order the pitcher and they just drop off the pitcher. Of course, Jennifer and I got the pitcher, just saying.
Yeah, after a couple of them, I don't remember. So, yeah.
There you go.
They're large, let's put it that way.
As they sat at their table, one woman noticed something in the bushes across from the parking lot. Now, it was hard to make out, and even when they questioned if what they thought they saw was truly what it was kind of hard to believe. What is it, you ask? I'm going to tell you. One of the flight attendants called over the manager to point it out. The manager shuts all the blinds on the windows facing that direction. It was nearly 1 p.m. when the manager called Bridgeton police. After the police arrived, the crime scene investigators followed. The flashbulbs were popping and crime scene tape went up. Now, it was as if somebody had purposely placed it there to stare at the patrons of the restaurant. The dirty skull looked fake, but it was very, very real. The skull was collected and sent to the St. Louis County Medical Examiner's Office, where it was determined to be a skull more consistent with that of a female rather than a male. Now, it's important to note at this time in St. Louis, this was a huge, I don't want to say controversy, but it was an issue. There was a cemetery near the St. Louis airport, and for those poor souls who were laid to rest at that cemetery, well, they would not rest in peace. The Metrolink, which is our version of a public transport system, was being installed, being constructed near the airport and would run itself downtown. So downtown to the airport and back and forth and some other places. But due to the construction, many of the human remains were coming up and being displaced. Authorities believe this to be the case, thinking possibly an animal had carried the skull to the location. The skull was packed up and sent to the morgue where it would remain, since at this point, DNA is not a common thing. So it's just some relative foreign human remains is what it is. An interesting turn of events would happen on September 6th, 1991. Veneta Park Police Department received an unsealed letter. Now, the letter had no return address on it. Inside the envelope was a business flyer from Casa Gallardo. Now, the flyer was 8 months old, and it was advertising the restaurant's specials for the Super Bowl weekend. So, it was like free chicken wings or free nachos, right? But on the other side of the flyer, there's a sentence written in purple ink, all capitals. The Bridgeton police have L. Sherman's skull.
What?
On the opposite side of the Casa Gallardo flyer. Interesting. Lieutenant Michael Webb called Bridgeton to confirm that they had indeed located a skull about 14 months earlier. Dental records were retained from Linda Sherman's dentist with the hopes of indicating whether or not the skull was Linda Sherman's. It only took a day, and forensics had in fact confirmed that the skull was Linda Sherman. Now, whoever sent the letter obviously had some inside information about Linda Sherman and what happened to her. It was from the person who was either responsible for her demise, foul play, whatever, or at the very least, it's a person who had some information about what happened to Linda.
It had to have been, right.
The note was sent to the FBI with the hopes that they could get some sort of evidence off of it. However, there were no fingerprints located on the envelope or the note. And since the envelope was never sealed, it wasn't licked, right? No DNA from that either. The person who sent the note was careful. Now, Linda's skull was sent to the University of Missouri-Columbia. An archaeologist at the college examined it. It had some soil on it, and they were hoping at this point the soil would be able to indicate maybe where she had come from, where in the state of Missouri she had been buried. A botanist was also called in, and he examined the plant material that was attached to the skull when it was located. Sadly, nothing would come out of this. The plant was determined to be of the morning glory species, which is very plentiful around here. It's the vining purple flowers, and you can find that pretty much all over Missouri. And the soil didn't give any information as well. So Lieutenant Webb was stuck. So he reached out to Quantico's FBI Behavioral Science Department, but, they really couldn't help much either because there was so little to go on. I mean, they have a skull, they have a little plant material, they have some dirt on it, and then they have a woman named Linda Sherman's skull, correct?
Mm-hmm.
In November 1995, Wyatt attended the National Convention of the International Homicide Investigators Association. Here, he would tell anyone and everyone who would listen about the case in an attempt to get someone to give him something that he hadn't thought of, give him some insight or, just, I guess, angles he hadn't thought of. But, nothing. He had already tried all this, so he was not getting anything on this. Hope was once again in sight when Webb attended a crime scene archaeology conference where the science of soil would be a huge topic and how soil could lead to a major break. Linda's buried skull was exhumed and was shipped to Mercyhurst College in Erie, Pennsylvania. Professor James Adviseo would examine her skull. The process used electron microscopes and x-rays to examine the soil. The professor examined soil taken from Linda's skull and would compare it to other samples taken from various locations around Missouri. And the way that I thought this was pretty interesting, it could do just tiny, tiny little samples. So the sample from her skull versus the sample, say, from, Franklin County versus the sample taken from Washington County, right? To see if they were similar. I mean, basically at this point, what they're wanting is they were hoping that these samples would at least rule out definite areas in which Linda could be. Now, there's also a little bit of trauma to her skull. Anthropologist Dennis Dirkmatt was asked to look for any clues surrounding that, as well as anything else the skull would reveal about Linda and what may have happened to her. But the problem with that is, of course, it could be animal that got to it. It could be how it was, taken from one place to another. So it didn't really mean much at this point. They needed to find the rest of her body. So who is Linda Sherman? So Linda Sue Lutz Sherman was born on October 19th, 1958, in St. Louis, Missouri, to Walter and Eleonora Lutz. Linda would grow up in Ferguson and attend McClure High School. But a little thing came along, and that little thing was an unplanned pregnancy.
Happens.
It happens a lot, and that's okay. She had gotten pregnant by a classmate of hers named Donald Sherman. At this point, Linda was just a junior in high school. She was 17, and Don was a senior. So obviously, at this point, with them, their family, and, I guess they thought that the best thing to do would be to get married. So the couple did. They were wed at the Christ Memorial Baptist Church in Cool Valley on February 10th, 1975. It was a simple affair, and the couple, along with family and friends, celebrated after the ceremony at Noah's Ark Restaurant outside.
I loved Noah's Ark
outside of
restaurant.
St. George. I'm telling you, this is why this was kind of interesting to write to me, just all these locations and stuff.
When I was little, I would beg to go to that restaurant because it was the only restaurant that had self-serve ice cream. I
Oh,
would beg to go. And for those that don't know, the restaurant was done up as an ark with huge animals like coming out of the top of the ark. I mean, it was a huge building. It was amazing. And for little, Jen here, I was enthralled by the whole thing.
well, it was for a little kid. It was pretty spectacular. I'll tell you that too.
Amazing. Okay, sorry.
It's okay. I have something to say about that in a little bit. It's just interesting how when I was looking this stuff up, how paths cross, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Trying to make it all work, the young couple would move into a small house next door to Walter and Eleonora and continue to attend high school, which good for them. That's good. That makes me happy. Don, was a year older, so he would graduate that May. And shortly after, little Patricia Marie entered the world on summer break prior to Linda starting her senior year. Her mother would watch the baby as Linda went to school during the day.
Good.
We all know marriage and babies are tough, but add the fact that the couple were very, very young. They struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Linda would dabble in several jobs while Don finally, he was doing the same thing, but he finally landed a pretty lucrative, pretty good job as a machinist. Now, Linda's family would say that Don was extremely jealous about Linda and who she would hang out with, even if that was family, which is it's kind of a red flag there, y'all.
Yeah.
In October 1997, Linda would file for divorce for the first time. But in March 1979, the case was dismissed because of failure to prosecute. In other words, Linda quit pursuing the divorce. It laid stagnant, so then, of course, the judge is going to dismiss it. Mm-hmm. Linda and Don would try to make it work and ended up buying a little house in Veneta Park, a suburb in North County, St. Louis, that is. Linda and Don would suffer heartbreak as Linda had a miscarriage in the early 1980s and after would learn that she had epilepsy. Due to this, the couple decided not to have any more children, so they would only have the one, Patricia, or Patty, as they like to call her. In 1982, once again the marriage was in trouble. Linda would move out with Patty to an apartment in St. Anne. Tensions were high, and Linda filed a restraining order against Don, worried for her and her daughter's safety. Linda believed that Don was desperate because he had threatened to harm himself as well as Linda and Patty. There was also, she believed that Don had messed with her car, her brakes or something in there. And Don would later say he did, but he didn't. He was just angry. Still not good. The judge agreed with Linda and gave her the restraining order and $20 a week for child support.
$20?
$20 a week.
Oh my
this is in the 80s too.
Well, early 80s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's still not a lot of money, but still $20.
Right. Once again, Linda went back to Don, and the couple were trying to make it once again. Once again, it didn't last. On April 11th, 1985, Linda filed a petition for marriage dissolution and would continue to live with him, Don that is, until Don was served. To say that arrangement was stressful would be an understatement. I'm imagining Linda sitting on pins and needles waiting for the doorbell at the process server to come and serve Don papers. So they're still living together at this point.
Just FYI, I did a quick inflation calculator. It's still $20 in 1982 is equivalent to $61 today. That's
still cheap.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing about the cost of a kid.
Those kids eat that in a day, let me tell you.
Ugh.
Yeah. It was at this point that Don started to suspect that Linda was having an affair. So when a friend of his told him he was out and about and he saw Linda out with the man, Don was furious. Don would claim that Linda had cheated on him before, namely when she was a waitress at the Flaming Pit restaurant. Remember the Flaming Pit?
I don't remember the Flaming Pit.
You do. There were several around. There was one in Crestwood, but we'll get to that. The relationship was officially over. There would be no more reconciliations. On April 22nd, 1985, Linda went to work at her position at the U.S. Government Records Center, where she worked the night shift. Linda's time card would show she signed out at 2:16 a.m. Dawn would report that Linda came home and fell asleep on the couch. That morning, Dawn would take Patty, the little girl, to school and said that Linda left for work around her usual time. This would be the last time anyone would see Linda again. Interesting to note here, usually Linda always took their daughter to school. That was the routine.
Mm-hmm.
And her night shift would be, she'd usually leave for work at around 6 p.m. that night and work till, well, obviously she worked till 2:16 a.m. So this was, just make a little mental note that that's a little bit, it's straying from their usual routine.
Something was up.
Linda's sister Fran found out Linda never made it to work that day, that next day when he claimed that she left, and she was immediately worried. Fran and Linda were very close, and also Fran knew all the details, all the dirty details, if you will, of the relationship between Linda and Dawn. Linda was planning on living with her sister Fran after their divorce. This was all planned out. All of Linda's friends and family would say that there is no way in the world would Linda, who is an excellent mother, ever leave her 9-year-old Patty behind. And if you remember, she did leave him several times and always took Patty with her.
Right. I mean, most mothers do not leave their children behind.
Correct. Fran, Linda's sister, and her husband, Sam Miller, wanted to get the word out about Linda and Linda missing, so they made posters offering $1,000 for any information about Linda. Now, it was just 4 days later that Sam had a thought. This is how sometimes I just think things work in mysterious ways, I guess you would say. Sam had recently heard a news story about a person who went missing and their car was found at Lambert Airport, the St. Louis airport. So it kind of, I guess it's stuck with him. He was laying in bed thinking about this musician, a local musician, if you will, whose car had recently turned up at the airport. And it turned out that musician was murdered. He was starting to wonder if maybe Linda's car and possibly Linda could be at the airport. He woke up Fran and they headed to the airport and entered the parking garage. And just like, I can't even imagine, they went literally around like the first corner, if you're familiar with St. Louis and you know how you make that curve to get into the airport. They go in that first curve, bam, there's her car right there.
Darn.
Looking inside the car, they can see Linda's belongings in the back seat and in the front. They flag down an airport officer, and both of them, which I can't even imagine, are scared of what they're going to find in the trunk. But they also know they have to do it. They have to open the trunk. They need to know if she's in there. The officer was able to get the trunk open, and thankfully, it was empty. Linda was not in the trunk. The Millers then made their way to the Veneta Park Police and met with Lieutenant Michael Webb. Lieutenant Webb, as I previously mentioned, had been assigned the case. And at first, as is so often the case, he sets out to go interview family and friends regarding Linda, anything about her personality, anything that had been going on in her life, anything that would give them any idea about why she might disappear on her own, or if she would even disappear on her own.
She wouldn't disappear on her own.
Webb interviewed Don Sherman first. Now, Don would claim that there were some missing things from his house, which included a piece of luggage. He told Webb that Linda had left him 2 other times and took things, but this time she just didn't take her daughter with her. That's what he would say. I guess when she'd leave him, she would take random things like a couch, a bed, things like that, which, I mean, okay. But take a piece of luggage and leave your daughter? I don't think so.
No, yeah.
Don Sherman then tells the lieutenant, I actually saw Linda, and she was in a car with a person, a man, and I didn't know the man. And when she saw me, she ducked down in the car. She realized it was me, and she ducked down in the car. Now, this was about a week after Linda had disappeared. Lieutenant Webb contacted the airport and learned that Linda's car had been parked there since April 24th, but no airline had a passenger by the name of Linda Sherman traveling with them near that date. Lieutenant Webb was able to get employment records indicating the exact time she clocked out for the last time, which was that 2:16 a.m., and everyone who knew Linda liked her and was ruled out. Webb was working hard on the case, but there was nothing happening. It was stalled. The decision to go on air and inform people about Linda with the hopes that someone would come forward with some information. In an article about Linda in the old defunct St. Louis Globe Democrat, that ran in July 1985, Veneta Park Police Chief Robert Hartz was quoted as saying, "There's little more we can do without a break."
That has to be devastating to hear for the family.
Out loud?
Yeah.
Don Sherman would file a cross petition for divorce, stating that Linda had deserted himself and their young daughter. Don Sherman's choice, and this was a pretty easy story to write, but it took me down a lot of rabbit holes. But at the end, we'll circle the wagon, since I've been watching Yellowstone, and we're going to talk about that. But Don Sherman's choice for a lawyer was an unusual choice. His attorney was a man by the name of Frank Anzalone, a criminal defense attorney here in St. Louis. Did you get that? A criminal defense attorney?
Why would you need a criminal defense attorney?
Odd choice for a divorce attorney, I would say, or a divorce.
Especially if your wife has just left you.
Looking him up, Riverfront Times, which is a newspaper here, said that Anzalone defended those that no one else would touch. That was kind of his quote. Those defendants often didn't have much money to pay for his services, but he'd still take the case. Many of the cases involved murder, such as the case involving Charles and Audrey Sherman. What? Yeah, that's right. Don Sherman's parents.
Oh.
Many of the cases involved murder, such as the case involving Charles and Audrey Sherman. Yep, Don Sherman's parents. I just want to say that twice because, yeah. Just after midnight on February 25th, 1974, police were called to the Sherman home located in Cool Valley, which is a community located in North County. When the police arrive on scene, they encounter a 47-year-old Charles Sherman seated at the kitchen table with a fatal gunshot wound.
Oh.
His wife, Audrey Sherman, would tell officers that they were all asleep when they heard a huge bang, which woke her up and her 5 children in the house. And she came downstairs to find Charles seated at the kitchen table. Not really buying the story, police search the home and they find a gun hidden in the heating duct. So, I guess it's interesting. Somebody would break in the house and shoot him and then hide the gun.
Hide the gun
leave.
in the house, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Audrey Sherman was charged with first-degree murder. It would take 4 months, but Audrey would finally plead guilty to manslaughter. You ready? And ended up serving just 6 months in jail for the crime.
That's about right.
Frank Anzalone was successful in getting her this sentence.
So Frank was kind of a family lawyer, is what we're getting at, right?
He was.
Yeah.
So that's where he came from, but it's still an interesting...
oh, yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine he would even handle the divorce, but yeah. Frank was now acting as Don Sherman's divorce attorney, and it was Frank who had the divorce case up in court under uncontested divorce. Now, this was 1988, 3 years after Linda had first filed. Now, did you get that? So Frank had the divorce up, and he wanted the divorce to be granted and have it be an uncontested divorce. And if you don't know what that means they're both fine. Neither of them want anything. They just want the divorce. Well, that's interesting because that would mean Don would get the divorce and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, back when she had, first filed for divorce, had hired a lawyer by the name of Frank Vatterott to represent her and rep her in court, basically. Frank got wind of this and was absolutely not. He would send a letter to the court saying that there is no way he would consent to an uncontested divorce since, as far as he knew, Linda Sherman was still missing. In June 1989, a judge dismissed the divorce case, thereby leaving the Sherman marriage legally intact because Linda could not be located. Now, if your mind's going here and you're thinking how we started this case, And almost like magic, on June 28th, 1990, Linda Sherman's skull was found outside that restaurant in North County. And this would mean that Linda Sherman was very much not alive. She was not with us anymore.
What a coincidence.
Thank you. Perhaps it's a coincidence, or perhaps it was fate, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to say what it is. It's odd. But, this is interesting, too. That Casa Gallardo, as my mom called it, Casa Gallardo restaurant, happened to be Don Sherman's favorite. That very location was his favorite restaurant. And it seems that on the day her skull was discovered, Don happened to be at that restaurant.
Oh, wow.
And he even said, quote, "It was the talk of the restaurant."
What are the odds?
That's why I said, I'm just going to call it odd.
What are the odds of that happening? That just the skull is found there, and
just the skull.
The husband of the victim is at the restaurant at that time.
So with that,
weird.
Dawn would be able to be granted a divorce based on the fact that she is no longer with us. Years have passed and life had continued on. Don Sherman would get remarried and have yet another daughter. And he would say that he doesn't know who would have wanted to kill Linda, but there's always been lots of rumors. Rumors that he was the police's number one suspect, but also that there were others who were responsible. Now, Don Sherman would give police, he said that there was a cocaine ring going on at her place of employment, and that he believed that she might have been, involved in that. But there was no evidence that there was ever a cocaine ring at the record center in which she worked.
Nothing like soiling the dead's reputation. Yeah.
Don said that the police would interview every person he went out with, every, lady, and even his wife before she became his wife. And there was, however, an ex-girlfriend who claimed that he confessed to her that he had killed Linda, but he adds she then attempted to collect reward money. So she called and said, hey, he confessed to me, he tried to kill her, and then she wanted to collect that $1,000 money. So that's kind of, it's,
I'd do that. Yeah.
Well, if it's true though.
Yeah.
Don is saying she's lying.
Oh,
See,
gotcha. He's saying that she just wanted the money, so she's lying.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So Don Sherman had always had a standing invitation to come in and take a polygraph test, but he has always declined, citing on the advice of his lawyer. Of course he is. Sherman would also add that he believed the police, especially Lieutenant Webb, harassed him. And Webb, however, believed he did not harass him and added he's never been eliminated as a suspect. Unsolved Mysteries they did a segment on Linda's case in July 2nd, 2001. On May 7th, 2015, 58-year-old Don Sherman died at the Good Samaritan Regional Health Center in Mount Vernon, Illinois. In 2009, Lieutenant Webb passed away. At this point in time, there's been nothing come up, and I fear to say with the passing of the lieutenant as well as Don, probably much, I fear to say I don't ever know if it will have a resolution. Patty has went on to get married and have her own family. She lives around here somewhere. But as always, if anybody out there knows anything, please call the Veneta Park Police Department at 314-428-7373. Now, Jen, let's talk about this. What are your thoughts?
What do you think I think? I think that he did it. I mean, it's... yeah.
One big takeaway you have to see sort of here is that, he wanted to get a divorce, but because it had only been 3 years, I think it's 7 years if I'm not mistaken, but it had only been 3 years and she had still disappeared. She was still missing. And then, crazy, about a year later, here comes her skull at his favorite restaurant.
There are
some people that say that that's fishy in the sense that why, if he did it, why would he place the skull there? Because everybody knew that was his favorite restaurant and that would be too much. Some people believe that the person who wrote the letter and the skull wasn't Don, but maybe knew something about it. I don't know. I guess we'll never know.
No, which is, yeah. Who else could it have been, though? Really? I mean, it wasn't the cocaine ring.
No, it was not the cocaine ring. And I think the fact that he said that she just left him and left the daughter, that's a little, I don't know. It's bothersome a little bit, if you will. So this was today, if this case happened, I totally wholeheartedly believe it would be solved. It's just advances have come so far.
No, I didn't realize he had passed away.
Yeah, he did. So when I was looking, so she worked at the Flaming Pit, and this is the thing I was going to tell you, the Flaming Pit restaurant, which was started by this person who ended up doing franchises here in St. Louis and things like that. But he also, Jen, saw this oblong building in St. Charles, and he was like, you know what, that would be cool. So he bought it, and he made it Noah's Ark. So it's the same guy that owned
Same guy.
Flaming Pit, and yeah.
God, I loved Noah's Ark as a kid. I loved it. It was fantastic.
So
I don't remember the food. I just remember the building.
It was just kind of like kid, regular food, if you will.
Yeah. It was a buffet, wasn't it?
This, I don't even remember. I don't think I'd never been there.
I just remember that I always wanted to go there because it had the soft serve, like soft serve. And as a kid, that was like, yeah, and you could make it yourself, right? Forever. Yeah,
it's hilarious.
Well, I am in the camp that the husband was the murderer. It would be too weird for that not to have been the case.
Her brother had come out and said that he was notoriously jealous. I'm sorry, I can't get that out. And even basically forbid her to go to lunch with her own brother. And her brother stood up and was like, I don't think so, pal. She's my sister. And we're going to go to lunch and we're going without you. Again, if this happened today, I'm sure there would be spying and, that kind of stuff. But then there wasn't. Yeah. So just tragic. I hate unsolved stories. I just do.
I do too. And we've had so many of them lately. Yeah.
And then, Lieutenant Webb had said that this case just haunted him. And again, sort of like your story from last week, even though an officer, an investigator, a detective, whatever, knows or really, really knows in their heart of hearts that they think that somebody did it, that doesn't mean anything. You still have to prove it. So I think you have
to have the evidence or it won't stand up in court. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
So a lot of this information came from an article written, and I'll put it in the source notes in Riverfront Times. So then that's when I did. So I looked into the Flaming Pit restaurant. This is my rabbit holes I went down. The Flaming Pit, and then the attorney Frank Anzalone, looked him up, and he was married for a while, but he was the guy that would work 7 days a week till midnight. So he would work like in the morning. So he basically got like 4 hours sleep. He died pretty young. I think he was only 61.
Wow.
But he,
obviously was good at what he did.
Yeah, and he did. I was trying to find some because they said he had high profile cases, and I was trying to figure some out. But it was mostly he repped murderers and rapists and like hardcore criminals and things like that. Yeah, that's all I got really. Just interesting. The Flaming Pit and then the Noah's Ark and going down that thing. And Flaming Pit was sort of like a fancy steak restaurant, but for family. So that kind of genre. Remember back in the day? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it started in St. Louis. So that is the story of Linda Sherman, and I wish her peace wherever she is, and I'm sad that they were not able to get justice for her yet. But maybe somebody knows something out there.
At least close it out so they know for sure who did it.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jennifer and I and our Casa Gallardo days. So Casa Gallardo was a Mexican restaurant that I went down this path too. So they called it the Mexican Food Wars, because at that point Casa Gallardo was huge, Chi-Chi's, and there was another one, and they were all like in St. Louis, like fighting for like the market or whatever. So that was kind of interesting. But Jen and I used to go to Casa Gallardo, and when we were poor, we were younger, you got free chips with a drink. So we would go there and just drink and then eat free chips. That was our dinner.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the days.
The good old days when you didn't have an hangover.
Ooh, doggers. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So that is that.
Interesting. Very interesting. I was confusing it with another case where it was in St. Louis, where they had a skull that they believed to be a Native American. And then later, when they did DNA, they found out it was actually a murder victim. So
it was a murder or wasn't?
It was somebody that had gone missing, and they believe it was a murder victim. I'll have to look into that one and see. I don't know the whole case. I tend to get these two confused. So I'll look into it and see what I can find.
And on this, there was, thinking about this, it was like, okay, so she had been missing 3 years. Somebody goes, I think it's 3 years. Somebody goes and digs up her body and takes the skull and places it out there. I mean, that's pretty gruesome if you think about it.
And then puts it in by the restaurant where her husband loves to go, and where her husband just happens to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I went on Reddit. Not that I normally do that, but sometimes, especially like with local cases, I just like to see what they say. And there's some people on there that are a little hostile. This one was like, Don Sherman has been let go, meaning like, and that's not true. He really never was ruled out as a suspect. I mean, just because you can't get them and charge them with a crime doesn't necessarily mean you're ruled out, right? And maybe he didn't do it. I don't know, but I think it's high time we find out who did.
I agree. Interesting.
So you've been watching anything good on, just a little segue, because this one's a little bit shorter. You watching anything good on TV?
I broke down and started The Last of Us.
Oh, see, I have not. Is that good?
It's
sad.
Oh, the last episode that I watched was the third episode, and yeah, there's
sad.
The first episode I was in tears, and the third episode I was in tears. Also, the third episode gave me a jump scare. The creatures in here scared the hell out of me the first time I saw them, because it was like a dark thing, and then all of a sudden, light. They pounced out into the light, and I jumped. It's so good. And the lead character is by a man, Pedro Pascal. Mm-hmm. And he
was the Saturday Night Live host last night, by the way.
Yes. And he was also in The Mandalorian, which my husband knew him from. And also in the 4th season of Game of Thrones, I believe.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, I'm just like, they could have picked he's okay looking. And then they fast forward 20 years in this, and he's all gray. And I'm like, he's really handsome now. And I yelled at my husband. I know, I yelled at my husband. I'm like, why do men always look better when they get older? But it's really good. It's really good. I think the new episode it's Sunday. I think they come on Sundays. And so the new episode will be on tonight. But it is really good. It is. And I bawled like a baby on the last episode. It's amazing. And my husband played the video game, and he will watch it, and it drives me crazy, but I understand where he's coming from. He's like, that scene is exactly the scene from the video game. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, like they go into Boston, I guess, and it's been 20 years since this plague has hit, and the town is just in ruins, and they have done the whole city like the shots of the video game. Mm-hmm. So they're staying fairly true to it, except from what I hear, the last episode was kind of new to the show. But
interesting.
I bawled. I cried.
See,
I did. And I'm a crier. I could cry at the drop of the hat anyway. But this really got me. It's very tender and sweet.
I can't have that right now. I just can't. I just can't. Can't do it yet. Nope.
It's good. I strongly suggest watching it. And I don't know if I talked about this the time before, but Poker Face with Natasha
Oh my God,
Lyonne.
I love Poker Face.
It's great, isn't it? I love it.
It is Columbo redone. It's Columbo with the female lead. Even the captions, the show start. I'm losing my mind right now. Is done in that like old fashioned 70s vibe.
Yeah, and talk about attractive older men. Benjamin Pratt. I never thought he was cute back when he was dating Julia Roberts.
He's always been cute.
Oh, for me, not so much. But now I'm just like, look at him. Yeah, look at him grow. That's what I can think of. Damn, that's Benjamin Pratt?
Maybe you don't want to say it like that.
Well, you know what I mean, but it's just
I know what you mean.
He had a glow up. Let's put it that way.
There you go.
Yeah. But I don't know.
I've been working on trying to get through the Oscar-nominated movies. Have you seen any of those? Let's talk.
Haven't.
Okay.
Let me tell you.
Top Gun. Don't get me started on that. What I really loved was the Banshees of, and I'm going to mess this last name up, Inisherin with Colin Farrell. Oh my gosh. It was such a pleasant, I don't know. It was just a pleasant movie. Yeah. And his little buddy, I can't think of his name. Shoot, I can't think of it. Elvis. I really liked Elvis. It was different. It had that, it was different, but I liked it. I do think Austin Butler did a heck of a job.
Oh, he did. He really did.
And then one little present, and it still makes me laugh because I'm still thinking about it. Triangle of Sadness. Have you seen that one?
No, the Elvis is pretty much the only one that I've seen.
Triangle of Sadness. At first, I was like, what is this about even? And then I stuck it out, and I was like, I really liked it. It's like a dark satiric comedy, I guess. But not, I don't know. It's just weird. If anybody's if anybody listening has seen it, drop me a line so I can have somebody to talk about it. I made my daughter watch both of those, and she liked both those too. She's a big movie person, but so yeah. And then I have some more that I need to get through, but that's what I watched.
There's that Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I want to see that, but it's not. Yeah, I know. And you know what? It looks so good.
It looks fantastic. And I've been trying to get everybody to sit, or my husband to sit down with me because he wants to see it too. But things happen and we can't do it. But that looks.
And I think that one has to be one that you're really going to have to pay attention to. So
right.
You'll miss little nuances and things.
And yeah, out of all the ones, this is the one that I think my husband will enjoy the most. So that's the way. Yeah.
I don't know. I think he might like the Triangle of Sadness, but you got to stick with it because it comes in chapters. In the first chapter, I was like, what was that even about? But then they all connect.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And yeah, just funny.
When is the Oscars? I know the Super Bowl is
usually in March.
Past us now. We're recording this a couple weeks early, so Super Bowl might have already hit. I think it did. I don't know. But congratulations to the sport team that won.
Well, you ready for this? Kids pulled me out of class last week, and they're like, okay, Miss Anderson, because the broadcasting class, they're like, you're going to be the tiebreaker. So which team do you think it is? And I smile really big. And don't hate me, people. I said, I got to be honest. I woke up this week and saw all the stuff about the Chiefs, who are from the state of Missouri. Of course, we share them with Kansas. And I was like, why is everybody wearing Chiefs gear and cheering them on? What did they do? Something must have happened. And then I thought, ooh, maybe they're in the Super Bowl. And it turns out they are. And I couldn't even tell you who they're playing. So then the kids totally laughed. I go, so of course, I'm going to go with the Chiefs because, yeah.
Yeah, because we're Missouri. You have to. It's kind of like the law here. But it's Eagles, I believe, right? The Chiefs and the Eagles,
maybe? Sure. Yeah. I just don't. I mean, if I watch the Super Bowl, it's for the halftime show, and that's it. Really.
Yeah, I don't watch it. I don't want. I'm not into sports balls.
Yeah, I got you. The 95th Academy Awards are March 12th.
Okay, so you got time to watch them all.
Yep, I will. The other one, Women Talking, I'm going to watch that one really badly too. Maverick, Top Gun. I hate to
doesn't interest me.
But why is that a Best Picture? I'm sorry. No. Just
I think it's one of those things that they just want to give out to Tom Cruise.
No,
maybe he wasn't a producer of that. I thought he was a producer.
Oh, he probably was. No, I don't know. I just think I don't know.
No, I don't know either.
If I ruled the world, I don't know. I'll let you know which one I think should win. But there you go. And of course, I'm back on 1923. Came back today, which is February.
So you're not doing anything for the 5th? Rest of the. Yeah.
No, I am because they only release one episode a week, which I hate. I wish I would have waited, but I can't. So I get up Sunday morning and watch that. And The Mayor of Kingstown.
I haven't started that yet.
Yeah,
I saw the first season, but I haven't seen the second.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And
as good as the first.
Well, I watched the first back to back to back, and I hate to say it, I just like the binging because you stay interested.
Right.
And now the second season is the weekly thing. And I don't like that because I kind of forget what happened. And I like to be in that mode. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So Poker Face, I watched straight through back to back, but they're standalone episodes. So it's fine. But the Mayor of Kingston and all the Yellowstone and the spinoffs, they're all connected. So I think it's better just to binge straight through. So if I were you, today was episode 4, and I think that I would wait till it's done and then watch season 1 and season 2, binge them.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And see, I've tried to watch Yellowstone. I just couldn't get into it. Maybe it was just my
no, I couldn't either
that time, and then maybe it'll hit sometime. I'm sure it will.
It's the beginning's very slow. I tried to watch it last Christmas, like a year and a month ago. I got through 4 episodes, and I was like, this is boring. I can't watch it. And then just on a whim, I started it. I don't know when. And I'm just, part of the craze, the cult, if you will. So that's it. And that's all I really got, I think.
I don't know. All I know is it was very sad to learn that Cindy Williams passed away.
I know
from
that we're
Laverne
getting
and Shirley.
I know we're getting older, Jen, but it just seems like it's a lot. Lisa Marie Presley, Cindy Williams, just a lot of people going lately. I don't like it.
Laverne and Shirley is like my love. That's one of my big shows that I always loved. And I think Michael McKean's the last surviving cast member.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
It's
just Lenny died too.
Yeah. So That it hit me. And did you know that Cindy Williams is Kate Hudson's stepmother?
I did not know that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
I read that. Interesting.
Interesting. Yes, it is. Hope everybody is doing well. Giant thank you if you've left us a nice, sweet review. It means the world to us. It really does. And if you have a problem or a complaint, no problem, but just be constructive. That's all I got to say about that, because we can't fix it if we don't know. Am I wrong? You know?
Or instead of just reach out to us at our True Crime Podcast.
Yeah.
At gmail.com.
I know you wouldn't believe this.
Answer you.
Jennifer and I are not real professionals. Like, we do not do this.
We're not journalists.
No.
We're not investigative reporters.
Nope.
No.
I mean, we are really, like, from our bed and our computer and our TV and texting each other nonstop about things. But yeah, no.
Armchair detectives at best.
Exactly.
So,
but anyway, love you all out there. And until next time, remember, lock your doors.
Keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya.
Today's episode was researched and written by me, Cam. For more information about this episode, as well as all the sources I used, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by hosts Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from October Pod VHS. Our True Crime Podcast is executive produced by Nico Vertesi and Dick Vane. Make sure to like and subscribe to Our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter at Our True Crime Pod. You can email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. If you really like the show, make sure to check out our Patreon at Our True Crime Podcast. Our True Crime Podcast is an OTC production.